Thick smoke rolled across the battlefield like a living thing, swallowing the desert in great gray mouthfuls that stung the eyes and turned the lungs to sandpaper. Private Danny Carson pressed himself against the crumbling wall of a bombed-out structure and tried to remember his training. Breathe. Assess. Act. The problem was that his hands wouldn't stop shaking, and the ringing in his ears from the mortar blast had turned the world into a muffled, distant place where sounds arrived half a second late and nothing felt entirely real. 9 days. He'd been in combat for 9 days. Before that, he'd been a kid from Decatur, Illinois who'd thought he understood war because he'd watched documentaries about it. He understood nothing. The explosion had come from his left, close enough that he'd felt the shockwave in his teeth, close enough that the man who'd been standing 2 feet to his right, a corporal named James Mitchell who laughed too loud at his own jokes, had been thrown 15 feet into a concrete barrier. Mitchell was alive. Danny had checked. But the world had briefly turned white and then very dark. And when his vision cleared, the 3 enemy fighters who'd been advancing on his position were down. All 3 of them. Clean shots, each one. The woman was crouched 3 feet away, her rifle still trailing a ghost of smoke. She was checking the horizon with her scope, unhurried, as though the chaos around her was weather she'd learned to ignore. She wore unmarked combat gear, no rank insignia, no unit patch, no name tape. Her face was layered with grit and dried blood, none of it apparently hairs. When she moved like something that had been built for exactly this purpose. "Hey," Danny called out, his voice cracking on the single syllable. He cleared his throat. "Try it again. Hey, you saved my life back there." She didn't respond, didn't look at him. "What's your rank, anyway?" That got a reaction, though not the one he'd expected. Down the trench line, Sergeant Marcus Webb's hands went slack on his weapon. Lieutenant Paul Jennings took an involuntary step backward. Captain John Harrison, 20 years of service written in the hard lines of his face, went visibly rigid. The woman had turned slowly. She reached up and pulled off her helmet, letting dark hair fall across her shoulders. And when her eyes found Danny's, he felt something cold move through him. Not hostility, not threat, just emptiness. The particular emptiness of someone who'd looked at too much death for too long and stopped being surprised by it. "Ghost Viper," she said. "Special Command." The name fell like stones into still water, sending ripples through every soldier who heard it. Harrison recovered first, which was his job. "Stand down," he said quietly to Jennings, who had his weapon halfway raised. "Everyone, stand down." But his hands, Danny noticed, weren't entirely steady either. The attack had come at 0347 hours. Harrison had been reviewing supply manifests. Dull work, necessary work, the unglamorous machinery of keeping 3 forward operating bases alive, when the first mortar round hit the northern perimeter with a sound like the world splitting open. The second explosion took out the communications tent before anyone could sound an alarm, which was too precise to be luck. By the time Harrison reached the command post, Bravo Company was fighting for its life. "Contact left." Staff Sergeant Angela Torres screamed into her radio, her voice barely cutting through the wall of noise. "Multiple hostiles, Sector 7. They're inside the wire." Harrison counted at least 40 enemy combatants in the initial assault wave. They'd bypassed every sensor, every checkpoint. Someone had given them the layout. He felt the cold certainty of that settle in his chest like a stone. "Fall back to secondary positions," he ordered. "Get the wounded to." The bunker to his right erupted in flames. 3 of his soldiers had been inside. In the chaos that followed, through smoke so thick it turned men into shadows, Harrison caught movement on the ridge above the base. A single figure in unmarked combat gear moving with a precision that didn't seem human, that seemed almost choreographed, each step exactly where it needed to be, each adjustment of the rifle exactly calibrated. 3 enemy fighters dropped in quick succession, each one with a single round through the head. Then the figure vaulted a barricade and came down in a combat roll, rising with rifle raised. "Female," Harrison registered, with a surprise he immediately felt ashamed of. The surprise wasn't the gender. It was the competence. He'd seen operators before. He'd never seen anyone move like that. "Identify yourself," Jennings demanded, stepping forward with his weapon coming up. She didn't answer him. She moved to the fallen soldiers nearby, checked vitals with quick efficiency. 2 fingers, 3 seconds. Decisive. Then took up a defensive position behind a concrete barrier. I said, identify yourself. Jennings stepped closer. She fired twice without looking at him. 2 enemy soldiers fell in the darkness beyond the wire. I was sent from command, she said. Her voice was flat, emptied of everything but information. That's all you need to know. Harrison studied her the way he'd learned to study people. Not just what they showed, but what they didn't. The way she moved spoke of training so extensive it had become instinct. Special operations, certainly. But which unit? Why no identification? And why hadn't he been notified of her arrival? Captain Harrison, Bravo Company, he said. This is my base. You want to operate here, you follow my chain of command. Her eyes flicked to him briefly. In that moment, Harrison saw something that made his blood run cold. Not defiance. Not the usual operator arrogance he'd encountered over the years. Just emptiness. The look of someone who'd been to places most people couldn't imagine and had decided, at some point, that those places were home. Your base is compromised, she said. Your perimeter was breached because someone on the inside gave them access codes. The attack on your communications tent was surgical. They knew exactly where to hit. She paused. You can question me after we survive the night. Another mortar round whistled overhead. She was moving before it hit, dragging 2 wounded soldiers away from the impact zone. The explosion showered them with debris. She kept going. Harrison made a decision. Torres, cover our guest. Jennings, head count and status report. Someone find out why our air support isn't here. The battle lasted another 40 minutes. By the time the enemy withdrew, Bravo Company had lost 9 soldiers with 14 wounded. It could have been worse. Harrison knew that in the bone-deep way of a man who'd run the calculations, who'd watched the mysterious woman eliminate at least 15 hostiles with shots that seemed to rewrite what was possible. As dawn broke over the desert, he found her checking ammunition near the ruined communications tent. Up close, she was younger than he'd first thought. Early 30s, maybe. But her eyes belonged to someone much older. I need answers, Harrison said quietly. Who are you? Really? She didn't look up from her work. Someone who's been dead for 3 years. Until tonight. The effect the name had on the assembled soldiers was something Private Danny Carson would remember for the rest of his life. He'd asked about her rank mostly because the adrenaline was still singing in his veins and he couldn't stop talking. It was a habit he had, filling silence when he was scared, finding the edges of levity in dark places. Mitchell had elbowed him and told him to shut up. Several soldiers had gathered anyway, drawn by the first attempt at humor since the shooting stopped. Rank doesn't matter, she'd said. Only the mission. And then she'd walked away, and Sergeant Webb had looked at Danny with an expression he'd never seen on the sergeant's face before. Something close to reverence, something close to fear. But it was later, after Harrison had confronted her in the wreckage of his command post, that the name came out in front of enough people to truly land. Torres dropped the medical kit she was holding. Jennings stopped mid-stride. The wounded soldiers who could hear went quiet. Ghost Viper, the operator who'd single-handedly held off an enemy battalion during the Battle of Raqqa, who'd eliminated 17 high-value targets in a single night, who'd been awarded every medal the military could give, most of them classified, who'd been declared killed in action 3 years ago and given a full military funeral. That's impossible, Torres whispered. I was at the memorial service. You were at a funeral for a ghost, the woman said. She turned to face them, and in the morning light, Danny could see the exhaustion in her that she'd been carrying for a very long time. Not the exhaustion of the last 24 hours, but something deeper, structural, built into the architecture of her. They needed me to disappear so I could do what needed to be done. So I could hunt the people who destroyed my team without the restrictions of official channels. An older soldier pushed through the crowd. Master Sergeant Raymond Cole, 30 years in the service, a Vietnam veteran whose face had weathered into something like old leather. He'd gone pale in a way Danny had never seen on a man that old. I knew Ghost Viper, Cole said, his voice hoarse. Trained with her at Bennying before she went dark ops. He hesitated. She had a scar on her left shoulder. Training accident with a breaching charge. Ghost Viper rolled up her sleeve without a word. The scar was there, distinctive and old. Cole stepped back. His head moved slowly from side to side. Sweet Mother of God. I'm really here, Ghost Viper said. Whether I'm alive is debatable. Torres told Danny the story later, in the armory, while he cleaned his rifle and tried to make his hands work properly. 3 years ago, Camp Integrity in Syria. A high-value target moving through rebel-controlled territory, planning a chemical weapons attack on civilian populations. 200 fighters in a fortified compound. A suicide mission that Command wanted accomplished. They sent Ghost Viper. One operator. Solo infiltration. We thought it was insane, Torres said, her voice going quiet with memory. We assumed she'd been captured or killed within hours. Communications went dead. We prepared for the worst. What happened? 72 hours later, she walked out of that desert. The target was dead. So were his top 12 lieutenants. She'd eliminated them one by one over 3 days, moving through that compound without anyone ever seeing her. Torres paused. During the debrief, she gave us intelligence on enemy positions, supply routes, and safe houses that led to the dismantling of 3 major terrorist cells. She'd been gathering information the entire time she was hunting. Danny stared. 13 kills in 3 days. In an enemy compound. While collecting intelligence. That's not even the most impressive part. Torres' expression darkened. 6 months after that mission, her entire team was wiped out. Operation Silent Dawn. They were hunting a weapons dealer named Victor Clove, someone selling advanced military technology to hostile forces. The team went dark in a village near the Syrian border. When the recovery unit arrived, they found 11 bodies. Ghost Viper's gear, her tags, DNA evidence. Everything pointed to KIA. She met Danny's eyes, but she'd survived. She was captured, tortured. Clove wanted to know how much they knew about his network. She didn't break. No. When she wouldn't, they staged her death. Threw off any rescue attempts. She spent 8 months in captivity before she escaped. Torres stood, stretching the stiffness from her back. By then, the military had closed her file. She couldn't come back without exposing ongoing operations. So she stayed dead. Started hunting the people responsible on her own. Mitchell, who drifted over to listen, leaned against the wall. 3 years. Alone. Skills, determination, and probably more than a little luck. Torres looked toward the doorway. But here's what you need to understand. Ghost Viper isn't just a soldier anymore. She's something that happens when you strip away everything. Identity, support, hope, and leave only purpose. She's been dead for 3 years. That changes a person. Danny thought about those gray eyes. The mechanical precision. The complete absence of fear. Is she even still human? Torres was quiet for a long moment. That, she said finally, is exactly the question. Captain Harrison stood in what remained of his command post, reading the encrypted message on his secure terminal for the 3rd time, as though it might say something different. Operator embedded with your unit for Special Task Force operation. Provide full cooperation. No questions regarding background or mission parameters. Authorization, JSOC Direct. Joint Special Operations Command didn't send messages like this unless something major was happening. Harrison had been in the military long enough to know when he was being kept in the dark for operational security reasons, and long enough to know that being kept in the dark sometimes meant people were going to die. He found her behind the medical tent, helping Torres treat the wounded. She worked with the same precision she brought to everything. Hands steady, movements economical, efficient without being cold. He watched her start and fall line with the same calm she'd shown when she was eliminating hostile fighters. I have wounded men, Harrison said. Dead soldiers. A compromised base. JSOC says you're legitimate, but I need something more than that. She finished tying off a bandage before standing. You have a security leak. Someone in your chain of command sold you out to the enemy. That's why I'm here. She paused. To investigate. To terminate. The words sat in the air between them. You're an assassin. I'm a solution to problems that can't be solved through normal channels. She wiped blood from her hands with clinical detachment. Your unit was targeted specifically because you're the logistics hub for 3 forward operating bases. Whoever compromised your security wanted to cut off supplies and support for the entire region. The question is why? Harrison's jaw tightened. JSOC sent you to what? Execute whoever's responsible without a trial. JSOC sent me to complete a mission that began 3 years ago. Her voice didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. This attack is connected to an operation that went sideways in Syria. An operation where my entire team was killed. Where I was captured and tortured for information I never gave. She reached up and pulled down the collar of her uniform, revealing a jagged scar that ran across her throat like a signature. When that didn't work, they tried to make me disappear. I've spent 3 years tracking the network that sold us out. The trail ends here, in your base, with someone on your team. Harrison absorbed this. If your team was killed and you were captured, how did you survive? I didn't. Not officially. She met his eyes. The military held a funeral for me. Full honors. The silence stretched between them. Outside, soldiers moved through the ruins of the base, securing positions, treating wounds, trying to restore some semblance of order. We need to identify the traitor, Harrison said finally, without tipping them off. We set a trap. Her voice was cold with certainty. Feed different information to different suspects. See what reaches the enemy. Whatever version they act on tells us who we're looking for. That could take days. More soldiers could die. They'll die anyway if we don't root out the infection. She met his eyes. I didn't come back from the dead to play it safe. Harrison looked at her for a long moment. He was trying to find the person under the weapon, the human being under the legend. He caught glimpses, something in the set of her jaw, something in the way she'd watched the wounded soldiers while she worked on them, something that suggested caring was still in there somewhere, locked behind 3 years of survival. What do you need? He asked. Access to your senior staff meeting tomorrow morning. I'll observe, say nothing. I'll be presented as a JSOC security assessor. A pause. And if we identify the traitor, then we complete the mission, Harrison said. He didn't ask what that meant. He was starting to understand that some things were better left unasked. The enemy compound sat 12 kilometers northwest of Bravo Base, a cluster of buildings in a valley that should have been empty. Ghost Viper had spent 6 hours observing through her scope, cataloging guards, routines, weak points, building a complete picture of what they were facing before she committed to anything. I count 20 hostiles, Lieutenant Jennings whispered beside her. Maybe more inside. Next guard rotation is in 40 minutes, Torres noted from his other side. That's our window. No. Ghost Viper adjusted her scope without looking away from it. Look at the northwest corner. Solar panel on the roof, but no power lines running to it. It's a decoy. That building is either empty or it's a trap. Mitchell studied the compound through his own optics. Then how do we get in? We don't. Ghost Viper pointed. That truck by the main building. Diplomatic plates. Someone important is inside. We take the truck. That's insane, Jennings said. Even if we get the truck, we'll have 20 hostiles behind us. Ghost Viper finally looked at him. In the green light of the night vision equipment, her eyes seemed almost luminescent. I'm not going back to base. You are. What? Once I have their attention, you extract with the vehicle. I'll keep them occupied. Torres shook her head. You mean you'll die holding them off? I've been dead for 3 years, Sergeant. Dying again won't make much difference. She checked her ammunition with the mechanical certainty of someone who'd stopped gambling and started calculating. Your job is to get that truck to Harrison. There will be intelligence in it. Papers, electronics. Maybe the person we're looking for. That's worth 1 operator. Not to me, Jennings said quietly. We don't leave soldiers behind. Something crossed Ghost Viper's face. Just for a moment, the briefest flicker, like sunlight through cloud cover, she looked almost vulnerable. Almost human in a way that went beyond the mechanical competence she wore like armor. Your loyalty is admirable, she said. But I stopped being a soldier the day my team died. Now I'm just a weapon. And weapons are meant to be expended. She moved before anyone could argue, sliding down the ridge toward the compound with a grace that seemed to belong to a different category of person. Torres cursed under her breath. Jennings watched her go. Then he signaled the others to follow. The operation unfolded with brutal efficiency. Ghost Viper eliminated the first guard with a suppressed shot. The second fell before he could raise an alarm. The third died reaching for his radio. By the time she reached the vehicle, 3 bodies lay in her wake, and she hadn't broken her rhythm once. The truck was locked. She had it open in seconds. Inside, a laptop bag, encrypted phones, a stack of documents marked with U.S. military classifications. Jackpot, she breathed. Torres, bring the team. We're extracting with the vehicle. Then the alarm started. She covered their extraction the way she did everything. Precisely, methodically, without hesitation. The compound erupted around her, doors bursting open, armed figures pouring into the courtyard. She laid down fire from the drainage ditch, reloading on the move, a bullet grazing her shoulder and another sparking off concrete beside her head. And she kept going because stopping wasn't an option she'd given herself. The truck roared away into the darkness. She was alone, 20 against 1. Ghost Viper felt something that had been absent for a very long time. It took her a moment to recognize it, because she'd stopped expecting it. She felt at home. These were the odds she understood. This was the equation she'd been built to solve. Come on then, she whispered to the darkness, and the darkness answered, and she answered back. The truck screamed through the desert at dangerous speed. Mitchell fought the wheel while Torres monitored their 6. The laptop bag sat between Jennings's feet, filled with whatever intelligence might unravel everything. We have to go back, Jennings said. She gave us an order, Torres replied. But her voice was hollow. Following orders. Jennings slammed his fist against the dashboard. Following orders is what got her team killed 3 years ago. Maybe it's time we started doing what's right. The radio crackled. Torres keyed it. Bravo Actual, this is Torres. We're inbound with critical intelligence. Requesting immediate tactical response team for operator retrieval. Static. Then Harrison's voice. Torres, what's your status? Where's our asset? Ghost Viper is pinned down at the enemy compound. Approximately 20 hostiles. She covered our extraction, but she won't last without support. A pause that contained calculations she couldn't hear. Negative on immediate extraction. Get that intelligence back here first. We'll assess. The radio exploded in static. Then silence. Jammed, Mitchell said. Someone jammed our communications. Jennings met Torres's eyes. Just like during the base attack. They crested a ridge and saw the roadblock. 2 vehicles positioned across the road. U.S. military vehicles. Jennings noticed, with a cold shock that started in his stomach and moved outward. Fellow soldiers taking position behind the vehicles, weapons raised. Waiting. That's Bravo Company, Torres whispered. That's our own people. Mitchell slowed the truck. In the headlights, faces became visible. Familiar faces. What do we do? Jennings picked up the laptop bag. We survive, and we figure out who's trying to kill us. The lead vehicle's door opened. Major Kenneth Drake stepped out, his service weapon drawn. Harrison's executive officer, 30-year veteran with an exemplary record. A man Danny Carson had seen joking with the enlisted soldiers 2 days ago. Stop your vehicle and exit with hands visible, Drake called. This is a lawful order. Torres stepped out slowly, hands up. Jennings and Mitchell followed. The laptop bag disappeared under Mitchell's jacket. Major Drake. So, we're on a priority. Mission from Captain Harrison. You've been compromised, Drake interrupted. All 3 of you have been feeding intelligence to enemy forces. Captain Harrison has ordered your detention pending investigation. Jennings laughed, a short, bitter sound. We get evidence of a traitor, and suddenly we're the bad guys. How convenient. Where's the 4th member of your team? Drake's eyes moved over them. Where's the JSOC operator? Dead, Torres said smoothly. Killed in the firefight. Her body is still at the compound. Something crossed Drake's face. Something that looked like satisfaction, quickly suppressed. Then her mission is finally complete. She should have stayed dead 3 years ago. Would have saved everyone a lot of trouble. The words fell into the desert silence. One of Drake's soldiers, Private Jake Sullivan, young, confused, lowered his weapon slightly. "Sir, I don't understand. These are our people. Why are we following orders, Private?" Drake turned to his men. "Disarm them. I want everything they brought back from that compound." Torres knew they had seconds before Drake found the laptop. Once he had it, they were dead. No witnesses, no evidence, just 3 more casualties of war. She met Jennings's eyes and saw her own calculation reflected back at her. The night erupted in gunfire. Not from them. From the ridge above the roadblock, muzzle flashes strobed in the darkness. Drake's soldiers dove for cover. 2 went down immediately, wounded, not killed, precision shots designed to disable. And Ghost Viper came down the ridge at a speed that seemed to belong to a different physics than the rest of them were operating under. Somehow still alive. Somehow already here. "Move," she shouted. "Get to Harrison. Now." Mitchell was already back in the truck. Drake raised his weapon and Ghost Viper put a round through his shoulder, spinning him around. A second shot destroyed his radio. A third shattered the engine block of his vehicle. The truck roared past the roadblock as soldiers scattered, uncertain who the enemy was, uncertain which orders to follow. Ghost Viper fired twice more, taking out the tires on the second vehicle, and then she was gone, back into the darkness as though the desert had swallowed her. How did she know? Mitchell gasped. "She's been hunting traitors for 3 years, Jennings said. "She knows how they think, how they operate." He held the laptop bag against his chest. "And she's willing to do whatever it takes. Even this." Torres stayed into the darkness behind them, wondering if Ghost Viper was still out there, still moving, still fighting a war that had already killed her once. "She's not going to stop," Torres said. "Not until every person responsible is dead. Or until she is," Mitchell said. "For real this time." The base appeared ahead, lights blazing against the night. But at the main checkpoint, Captain Harrison stood waiting with his weapon drawn. Torres felt the cold spread through her again. Then Harrison lowered the weapon. "Drive through," he said into the radio. "I've got them." The gate opened. The underground command bunker beneath Bravo Base had been built to withstand direct mortar hits. Reinforced concrete walls, single entry point, secure terminals and monitors covering every angle of the base. A perfect place, Ghost Viper had decided, for a final confrontation. She'd been inside for 3 hours before Harrison knew she'd breached the perimeter. She'd waited while Torres, Jennings, and Mitchell turned over their intelligence. Waited while Harrison reviewed the laptop's contents and the picture became clear. Waited until she knew exactly who the traitor was. Not Drake, who was a soldier following orders and therefore a tool, not the architect. And then she'd settled into wait some more. On the monitors, she watched Drake being taken into custody, his shoulder bandaged, his face arranged into an expression of furious calculation. She watched Harrison coordinating with his officers. She watched medics moving through the base treating the wounded. She waited. The bunker door cycled open. Colonel Thomas Brennan walked in alone. 58 years old, career logistics officer, currently overseeing supply operations for the entire regional command. His uniform was immaculate despite the hour. He looked like a man who'd spent his career moving resources from one place to another and had decided, at some point, that he deserved a piece of those resources for himself. He saw Ghost Viper and stopped. "Well," he said calmly. "The ghost returns." "Hello, Brennan." Her rifle didn't waver. "Been a while." 3 years. He glanced at the rifle. "Are you going to shoot me here in the middle of a U.S. military installation?" "I'm going to let you explain first." She held his eyes. "Professional courtesy. You were my instructor at Quantico. You taught me everything I know about covert operations, surveillance, infiltration, how to disappear." Something moved through his expression. Not quite regret, not quite pride. That's the problem with training exceptional soldiers. Eventually, they become liabilities. "You sold us out." Her voice didn't change. It was the voice of someone who'd been carrying this knowledge for 3 years and had burned through every emotion it had once contained. Operation Silent Dawn. "You gave Clove our position, our approach vectors, everything. 11 people died because of you. My team died because of you. Your team died because they couldn't see the bigger picture. Brennan moved to one of the monitors, studying the base layout with professional detachment. You think this is about money? About selling secrets to the highest bidder? You're not that naive. Then tell me what it's about. Control. He toned. Every weapon we send overseas ends up in enemy hands eventually. Every piece of intelligence gets leaked. The whole system is broken, corrupted from within. I'm not selling out our military. I'm managing chaos, creating order from disorder. Ghost Viper felt something crack deep inside her chest. The last piece of whatever she'd been holding on to, the last fragment of belief that there was a reason behind it, a logic that might make it comprehensible if not forgivable. You killed 11 soldiers, she said. My friends, my team, for chaos management. I killed obstacles to a necessary operation. His voice hardened. Yes, there's profit involved, billions in arms sales, technology transfers, resource allocation. But that money funds black operations that Congress would never approve. It pays for missions that keep America safe from threats the public never hears about. He met her eyes. You're a weapon. I made you into a weapon. Don't pretend you don't understand the calculus. I understand that you turned that calculus on 11 people who trusted you. And I understand that you're alone in this bunker with me. Your rifle against my sidearm. Brennan's voice was entirely steady. If you shoot me, you'll spend the rest of your life in prison. If you don't, I'll ensure you're dead within 24 hours. Officially this time. No coming back from that one. Ghost Viper lowered her rifle slightly. Brennan's hand moved toward his sidearm. You taught me something else at Quantico, she said. Remember, you told us that in the intelligence game, the most valuable currency isn't information. She reached out and touched a button on the control panel. It's proof. Every monitor in the bunker lit up simultaneously. Brennan's face on a video call, discussing weapon shipments with Victor Clough. Encrypted files, transaction records, operational documents detailing exactly what he'd done and exactly who he'd done it with. I've been broadcasting this on loop for the last 10 minutes, Ghost Viper said. Every computer in this base, every secure terminal, JSOC has been notified by now. Military police are surrounding this bunker. For the first time, Brennan's composure cracked. His hand moved faster. Ghost Viper was faster. She always had been. He'd taught her that, too. The single shot echoed in the confined space. Brennan staggered backward, clutching his chest, blood spreading across his immaculate uniform, and slid down the wall to sit on the floor with the expression of a man who'd run every calculation and gotten one of them catastrophically wrong. You won't survive this, he gasped. Too many like me. The system is broken, Ghost Viper agreed. She knelt beside him, watching the light fade from his eyes. That's why ghosts like me exist. To haunt it. To remind it that some debts can't be bought off or buried. He tried to speak again. Couldn't. He died with his eyes open, staring at the woman he'd trained. The weapon he'd created. The ghost he'd never quite managed to kill. Ghost Viper stood slowly. She keyed the bunker's communication system. Captain Harrison. The bunker is secure. One hostile KIA. I'm coming out. A pause. Please inform your soldiers not to shoot me. I'd hate to survive 3 years just to die from friendly fire. She ejected the magazine from her rifle, cleared the chamber, and set the weapon on the floor. Then she walked to the bunker door, cycled it open, and stepped into the light. 12 soldiers waited outside. Harrison at the front, his expression unreadable. Ghost Viper raised her hands and walked forward. The sun rose over Bravo Base in shades of gold and deep amber, painting the destroyed buildings in colors that were almost beautiful if you didn't know what had burned. Repair crews moved through the wreckage. Medics continued their work. The ordinary machinery of survival reasserting itself over the extraordinary machinery of violence. Ghost Viper sat on the hood of a burnt-out Humvee and watched the controlled chaos. She'd been in debriefing for 6 hours, answering every question from military investigators with the same emotionless precision she applied to everything else. Yes, she had killed Colonel Brennan. Yes, she had operated without official authorization. Yes, she had endangered soldiers under her command during the compound raid. No, she did not regret any of it. JSOC wants you in Washington, Harrison said, appearing beside her as the morning briefing concluded. He looked 20 years older than he had 3 days ago, which was about right. Full debrief. Medal of Honor recommendation. He paused. Probably court-martial proceedings as well, depending on who you've annoyed. Sounds busy. She didn't look at him. When do I leave? 1,400 hours. They are sending a helicopter. He sat beside her. For what it's worth, you saved this base. Probably saved hundreds of lives across the region by exposing Brennan's network. Your soldiers saved this base. I just pointed them at the right target. Danny Carson wants to thank you. The private from the initial attack has been asking about you since the bunker situation resolved. Something in her shifted. She turned to look at Harrison. Tell him to focus on his training. Tell him war isn't about heroes or legends. It's about the person next to you in the trench. The one watching your back. The one you die for. Is that what your team was? She was quiet long enough that a different kind of man might have moved on. Harrison waited. My team was everything, she said finally. When Brennan killed them, he killed the person I used to be. The person who believed in the system. Who thought we were the good guys. She stewed, stretching the stiffness of 3 years from her muscles. Now I'm just a weapon that thinks it's still a person. Maybe Washington will figure out what to do with me. Torres appeared first, then Jennings and Mitchell, looking like soldiers approaching an officer they both respected and feared. Torres started to speak and stopped. Started again. I don't even know what to call you, she said. Ghost Viper, whatever your real name is. My real name died 3 years ago. Ghost Viper works fine. Ghost Viper. Torres straightened slightly. Not quite at attention, but close. Something that was more personal than a salute and more honest. What you did, going back to save us during the compound raid. Risking everything to expose Brennan. That wasn't the action of a weapon. That was the action of a soldier who still cares about her team. Ghost Viper felt something crack. Not break, crack, like ice thinning at the end of winter, suggesting that underneath it, something might still be moving. The armor she'd built brick by brick over 3 years of hunting and killing and surviving was not impervious. It never had been. She'd just been careful not to test it. These soldiers, who barely knew her, were trying to give her back a piece of something she'd thought was gone. Thank you, she said. The words felt foreign in her mouth, like a language she'd once spoken fluently and had lost through disuse. All of you performed exceptionally under impossible circumstances. Your team cohesion, your flexibility, your courage, you reflect the best of what this is supposed to be. Jennings reached out and shook her hand. If you ever need backup, anyone to watch your six, or just someone who understands what it's like to hunt ghosts, you know where to find us. They saluted her, not as a superior officer. She had no rank, no official standing, no unit designation. As a comrade, as someone who'd bled beside them. Ghost Viper returned the salute. The gesture was mechanical and somehow more meaningful than anything she'd done in 3 years. As they walked away, Danny Carson appeared. He looked nervous in the way of young soldiers everywhere, the kind of nervous that comes from having something important to say and not quite knowing how. He'd cleaned up since the fighting stopped, but the experience was still visible in him, in the slight tension around his eyes, in the way he stood with more awareness than he had 9 days ago. Ghost Viper, he started. I wanted to apologize for joking about your rank, for not understanding what you'd been through. She studied him. So young, so much like she'd been once, before Brennan's betrayal had taught her that the real enemy could wear your uniform and know your name and have trained you to be exactly what they needed. Never apologize for being human, Carson. Never apologize for finding light in dark places. She held his gaze. That joke you made, that moment of levity in the middle of chaos, that's what separates us from people who have nothing worth protecting. They fight because they hate. We fight because we remember what love looks like and we want to keep it alive. She put a hand on his shoulder, briefly, the way his instructors probably had once. Stay alive. Stay good. Don't let this war turn you into something you're not. Yes. He hesitated. Will we see you again? Ghost Viper looked toward the horizon, where the desert stretched endlessly under a burning sky. Somewhere out there, beyond the wire, the world continued its ordinary violence. Somewhere out there, other networks existed. Other traitors sold other teams. Other missions ended badly for people who deserve better. Ghosts don't visit twice. Private, she said. We just haunt the places we used to call home. 6 months later, in a classified briefing room in the Pentagon, General Patricia Hughes reviewed the after-action report for what felt like the 100th time. The Ghost Viper investigation had uncovered corruption extending through 3 military commands. 18 arrests, 7 ongoing prosecutions, operations across 2 theaters of war that would have been compromised, already partially were, restored to integrity. A network that had been selling American intelligence and American lives for years, unwound thread by thread. And the operator herself had disappeared. After her initial debrief, after the self-defense ruling on the Brennan shooting, after the justified use of force finding on all other actions, Ghost Viper had been cleared of criminal charges, approved for the Medal of Honor, and promptly vanished. The ceremony had been scheduled. The recipient couldn't be found. The medal sat in a box somewhere, waiting. General Hughes, a junior analyst, knocked on the doorframe. We have a situation developing. Eastern Europe. Hostile forces threatening a refugee convoy. 300 civilians, mostly women and children, pinned down by enemy fire. No friendly assets within 50 kilometers. There's nothing we can do in time. Hughes pulled up the tactical display. The satellite imagery took a moment to resolve. When it did, she leaned forward. A single figure moved through the hostile lines with precision that the imagery couldn't quite capture but somehow conveyed. Each movement exactly calibrated, each action exactly necessary. In the time it took the analyst to point out the enemy positions on the map, she'd eliminated 8 hostiles and disabled their communications array. By the time Hughes counted to 60, the figure had created a corridor through the enemy lines, and the refugees were moving. 15 hostiles. 6 minutes. No civilian casualties. Then the figure disappeared into the tree line. One moment she was there, and then she simply wasn't. Was that? The analyst began. Log it as unidentified friendly asset, Hughes said. No further investigation. Because she knew. They all knew. That night, secure military channels lit up across the world. A military convoy in Afghanistan reported being saved by a lone sniper who appeared from nowhere and was gone before anyone could reach her position. A terrorist cell in Yemen was eliminated by an unknown operative who left no trace except for the work. A kidnapped journalist in Somalia was rescued by a woman who spoke perfect English and refused to give her name. Some called it coincidence. Some called it multiple operators with similar training. The veterans knew better. They recognized the signature, the economy of it, the precision, the absence of unnecessary force, and the total willingness to use necessary force. Ghost Viper had taught them what it looked like, even through the walls and the darkness and the distance. In barracks from Virginia to Okinawa, soldiers whispered the name. Instructors used her as an example in tactical classes. Recruits dreamed of being half as good. And in a database deep within the Pentagon, accessible only to the highest levels of military intelligence, a single file remained open. Operator code name, Ghost Viper. Status, active location, unknown. Classification, top secret and special compartmented information. Note, subject has declined formal reintegration with military structure. Continues to operate independently in support of U.S. strategic interests. All sightings should be logged but not investigated. Subject is considered a strategic asset operating under special authorization. Attempts to locate or contact are prohibited by order of JSOC. Medal of Honor, approved but unawarded. Psychological evaluation. Subject demonstrates classic symptoms of complex PTSD, survivor guilt, and mission fixation. However, subject's effectiveness in the field remains unprecedented. Recommendation: allow continued independent operations with minimal oversight. Subject appears to have found purpose in ongoing missions. Forced retirement could result in psychological deterioration. Additional note from Director Hughes: she's out there saving lives. Sometimes the system needs to get out of the way and let people do what they were built to do. even if they don't want the title, even if they never come home. The file hadn't been updated in 3 months. New reports came in every week. Somewhere in the world, on a rooftop or in a tree line or crouched behind enemy lines in a country whose name most people couldn't place on a map, a woman with gray eyes looked through a rifle scope and remembered 11 soldiers who died believing in something worth believing in. She breathed out, slow, controlled, the way she'd been taught. She pulled the trigger. The shot was perfect. It always was. The mission continued, because some debts can never be fully paid. Some promises can never be broken. Some ghosts will haunt the battlefield forever, protecting the living from the shadows, not because they have to, not because anyone asked them to, but because when you've lost everything else, purpose is what remains. And purpose, it turns out, is harder to kill than people. The legend persisted, whispered in the right rooms, written on no memorial, awarded no ceremony, honored in the only way that mattered, by the lives that continued because she'd been there, in the darkness, between them and the thing that wanted them gone. Ghost Viper, the soldier who became a ghost, and the ghost who refused to stop being a soldier. She moved through the night like smoke, like memory, like something the enemy would have nightmares about if they survived long enough to dream. Most of them didn't.